Gwan, are you there? What's good? And you know who this is, baby. The number one podcast in America, dedicated to all you kings and queens of color, homies and homettes, shotters, woo gals, G-boys, and charges. The one and only Jerk Jollof and Collard Greens podcast.
Gwan, are you there? What's good, y'all? It's your host and humble extrovert, G, aka G Ransom. And on today's episode, we've invited record producer and friend of the podcast, Michael Kelly, to chop with us and discuss the state of hip-hop/rap today and its impact on communities of color, starting with the correlation between the subject matter presented in hip-hop and its subgenres and the level of violence, crime present within the community, which the content derives. New York City's Mayor Eric Adams' recent comments calling on social media companies to help deter the influence of Brooklyn's growing drill rap scene, refueling what some may call the next war on rap, the power of music and its ability to influence, and if any point, free expression should be considered more than just expression or art and tried criminally. Lastly, we'll discuss the genre, how it's changed over time, musically, artistically, and why it no longer bears any semblance to its revolutionary and cerebral beginnings, and who's to blame. We've also got a few announcements and event appearances lined up that you'll definitely want to hear. So keep it locked in for all this and more on the world's most cultured pod right after we pay these tributes. So if you're not a follower, or perhaps tuning in for the first time, definitely check us out on Instagram or Facebook at Jerk Jollof Collard Pod to show us some love. Subscribe, as you always provide additional ways to reach us in the recorded outro at the end of the episode. Now we got to get into our Rep Yours for today. So this episode's Rep Yours is dedicated to Chef Tyler Mitchell, a private chef based out of New Jersey. Ty combines years of restaurant experience and culinary training to provide unique private fine dining experiences for any occasion. So whether you're looking for a chef to cater that next event, or you're just too busy to prepare wholesome meals for the family, or maybe you're looking to create a memorable and exclusive dinner experience for you and your friends and loved ones in the comfort and convenience of your own home, especially now with these gas prices being what they are, then definitely check out Chef Ty and show him some love. You can follow him on Instagram at chef_TYY_. He's available for bookings today. And speaking from personal experience, I actually had the pleasure of booking Chef Ty for a Valentine's situation. It was this past Valentine's. Shout out to Brandy at Blessed by Brandy on Instagram. I actually won the ability to hire the private chef for an event, in any event, and I was strategic with it. And I used it for Valentine's. I already know how crazy it is on those days. And I would say that the overall experience was very, very memorable. It was actually phenomenal. The food was great. The service was great. And we were all able to do it in the comfort of our home. And that saved us a ton of money. And if you just like that exclusivity, you know what I mean? It's definitely a good idea. Also, if you're in New Jersey and you'd like to try out some of Chef Ty's creations yourself, definitely still feel free to stop by the grand opening of Eventology Event Space in Middlesex, which will be on March 26th from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. Yours truly will be hosting the event through that time. So if you'd like to check out the podcast, check out one of the members, definitely show up this Saturday. And the address is 275 Lincoln Boulevard, Suite number 2 in Middlesex, New Jersey, 08846. There will be music, food, prizes, also some free food there. So definitely want to check it out so you're not too late. All right, so I did a lot of talking there, kind of ran through all the announcements. I'm about to chime in with the group. And right now we have about 4/5 of the podcast available. We got some new daddy duty going on. So that's been taking up a lot of people's time. But Dre out there, much love from the pod. I know how much you love hip hop. You would have loved to have been on the discussion, but I'm pretty sure you'll have some fun editing this. But let me chime in with the fellas we do have here. D Black, Fran, and Chunky. How are y'all doing today, man? How was the week? We record on Sundays and release on Wednesday. So we usually tend to recap the whole week sometimes when we link up for the first time.
Yo, it's really good, man. I mean, I'm excited to have this discussion. I'm really interested to kind of get a definition on hip hop and understand hip hop. And even if there's a dichotomy between hip hop and rap, I got questions, Mike. So I'm ready.
Oh, I'm ready for questions too. I have them as well. It's not like I have answers. So let's go.
Man, what's up?
What's poppin'? Man, I'm chilling, man. Just another day, just getting ready for work, Crazy week, but we here. Let's get it.
Yes, sir.
Definitely looking forward to the conversation and Mike, and thanks, Michael. I guess I'm not sure if you like to go by Mike.
No, Mike is fine. It's very informal with me. Mike is very fine.
Okay.
Just take liberty. I asked in advance. Okay.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
I missed that. Yeah. Well, Mike, I'm looking forward to the conversation. Really excited for this topic. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you, brothers. Thank you very much for letting me allowing me to be on your podcast. Thank you.
Indeed.
That now can we? Yeah, go ahead, Chunky. You have something to say for the people.
Yeah, I was like, Mike, thanks for being here. We truly appreciate it. I thought hip hop started with that like big animal that swims in the water, right?
Hey, if you go to Google, you just might find that, unfortunately. It's one of the issues that I have, but that's for later on in the discussion. Yes, sir.
Oh man, that's all
funny.
I got.
Chunky with the dad jokes
All day.
All day, every day.
But let's talk about these gas prices real quick, y'all, because the real talk, first and foremost, shout out, everyone that's supporting the efforts to render aid to the people of Ukraine and these ongoing tensions and whatnot. Definitely not a light situation. And it's been going on for the last few weeks and something that we haven't touched on yet. Maybe we could probably do something a little bit more in depth. But speaking of the impacts it's had here stateside, what are your thoughts on some of these gas prices? The other day, like I have about maybe an 18-gallon tank on my sedan, TLX 2015. And it cost me roughly in Jersey. You got to use premium for that car. There's like no questions about it. Cost me roughly about $56 to fill half a tank the other day. And the week prior, when I actually filled the tank, that was probably roughly about $80. So it's just like, what toll is this having on you guys directly, if at all, do you guys think?
That's nothing.
The highest you've seen.
That's nothing. from where I was to where the new state that I'm in now, like to fill up one of my cars was over $100. To fill up my car was about, on average, maybe $75. So like this is, I'm used to this price from the state that I just came from. So it's not that big. But I know for other people, it's crazy. I was saying gas prices out here as high as like 5 and some change. I know it got up to like what, close to 10 somewhere else on the West Coast, something like that.
Oh no, yeah, in LA, do the cheap prices. I thought I was going to a bargain place. Yes, it's $635. Dude. Okay, I trust me. I'm so glad I picked up an electric unicycle about a year ago, and I'm I'm putting mileage on that thing now. I'm like, man, come on, dude. I was in an area where you can say it if you want to, but quote unquote, and it's not even the hood, but the area considered to be the hood with some really good. You use that Waze. Yeah, it shows you the gas prices. Man, Waze was so wrong, dude. It was $635. You got me lost getting here, and then you got me paying. I'm like, come on, really?
Too late. As soon as you pull up to the pump, it's over.
Yeah, it's like the interest rates for houses. As soon as I pull up to the tank, dude, it's like bling, 10 cents a gallon.
Got him.
Exactly, man. So I'm using my electric unicycle. I'm using it. Trust me.
Save the planet. I appreciate that.
Oh yes, it's like I'm being very conscious when I'm going to the supermarket. If it's 2 blocks, man, I'm unicycling or walking. It's like that health thing is really kicking in now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I guess like for me, I'm not driving to work right now. Shout out to COVID. So I'm saving a lot of money from driving to work.
Wait, what?
I'm no shy. Trust me,
I'm not driving. I'm not driving anywhere. I mean, I'm working from home. So thank God.
Probably the only pro to COVID was that it allowed a lot of people that didn't have the work from home options, like myself, to actually work from home, and it's like a blessing for real.
It's been a blessing for me. It's been a blessing for me because I didn't have an office. So now my home studio is my office. I got to upgrade with COVID. I'm like, I'm straight.
Exactly.
I get up and go, I'm so good now. So yeah.
Nice.
People don't get to see this studio. That studio is fire.
The studio looks crazy. Y'all
yeah.
missing the visual.
I'm gonna get something like that. Just to get it. Start putting replica stuff everywhere. Like,
Yeah, I'm on.
Got TVs that don't even work just for show.
I'm glad I keep mine on the under. So I say I got a back cave. Don't nobody know what I got. I'm cool. But yes, I'm at home, dude. I'm good.
That's awesome. All right, so here's since we're on the matter of hip hop, while we were actually developing the concept of the show, it was Dre and I that actually came up with 2 intros for the podcast. One of which you all hear today, which is the kind of the Do the Right Thing, Fela Kuti inspired intro. But we actually had a second intro that was like a hip hop intro that I wrote. So I was just like, yo, should I spit it for the people one time so they could hear the talent coming from this group, but also know about the second intro? Maybe they could even decide which intro they want to hear next, right? Maybe they'd be like, yo, you feel that one better. So drop it in the comments if you like this intro. But if not, I'm about to drop it right now.
Do it. Drop it.
All right, check it.
Drop it like it's hot.
Here we go.
3, 2, 1, get it.
Amassing casualties with weapons of mass hilarity, all truth and no disparity, dispensing clarity on matters stoked with triviality for every POC and person black like me. Check it. Wagwan, are you there? What's good? JCCA cast reporting nothing but that good. Wagwan, are you there? What's good? That's how it was.
Yeah, fire, dude. Call the police, call the fire department. Fire.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes.
Thank you. I feel like you would hear something trash, you wouldn't tell me.
Nah, what the thing is, but see, nowadays it's kind of like you got to keep quiet because you can't judge it whether or not it's, quote unquote trash or not. They say trash it or smash it, but some hits is straight trash it, but it's number 1 and stays there for a couple of weeks. So it's like at that point it becomes what's the lyrical content. With me, it's more the lyrical content. I'm old new school and new old school, so I've actually been a part of and lived a part of both. So I'm not necessarily the 60-year-old, but I'm not necessarily the 17-year-old either. So I tell people I'm considered myself blessed. When I say I'm older, I don't have no shame because I'm still current. And I tell some of these younger cats, dudes, that I know it's not like I'm everywhere, but if I do run into like some relatives or somebody that I know that wants to do it, it's like, that's not a compliment if I'm sounding better than you because you're supposed to be me 2.0. But I've been blessed to stay current to where I am better, but then I can say, I could not be 21 right now, dude. It's very hard on the younger generation because of what I just said. And it's not just within music industry, but it's because they're literally living their life and they're doing what us older cats are scared of because we're scared to put something out because, we don't know if somebody's going to judge it. And these younger cats have literally been born into, if it hasn't been tweeted, it hasn't been done. And they're living their life. Their struggle is part of the digital process.
All right, so we'll hold it right there. Let's hold it right there. We'll get to that because we'll start from the top. We know you're ready to go. We had him on standby long enough. He's like, Coach, get me on the field, so we got you. But what do you guys think? You like that intro, or should we leave it in the tank or leave it in the vault somewhere? Let us know in the comments if you like that one. Let's tag it. Drop a lighter on there, drop a flame. But since you got Michael here, let's not waste any of his time and let's get this discussion started on the state of hip hop today. So, Mike, I'm just going to start with you on this first question because you have a lot of experience. If you want to open up about some of your background in music, but to say for the record that you are a producer that has some notable records under you. And we'll go from there. So let's talk about your first experience with rap and hip hop. Can you recount that for us and tell us what that was like? Or if there was any defining moment to you where you were saying, this is the genre of music that I want to get involved with, and this is the reason why. Can you tell us about that?
Well, yeah, as he said, I'm Michael Kelly. I actually, let's say I just started out with the question. My first experience or encounter with rap hip hop, actually, I am a pastor's kid. So in my house, we grew up church in the house. My father's minister, became a pastor later. So we just had gospel music or soul music. And so me being the soul person, music, you got Stevie Wonder, your sisters, whatever, James Brown, and my brother wanted to get into DJ and he wasn't supposed to. And he came across this, it's going to sound very cliche, but trust me, it's true. He came across his record. It was a Sugar Hill Gang. And so the Sugar Hill Gang was actually my first experience. I remember seeing that blue record with Sugar Hill Gang, and I was like, okay, now I'm hearing this, and I'm like, this is totally different than the James Brown and Stevie Wonder and the emotions that I'm listening to. And I'm like, this is kind of cool. I didn't know if it was going to be permanent. As he's DJing, I'm getting into DJing, but I'm always in the church thing. And then we eventually got into DJing and DJing for the schools. And that's how a lot of my friends, like Dr. Jones, and then were able to go to some of the dances at school because me and my brothers ended up DJing a lot of the school functions. And so from that, actually ended up being my first experience at hip hop. But then later on, I got into music just to literally begin into music. I've had a history of doing everything from classical, hip hop. My uncle is Ed Kelly, who got a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Monterey Jazz Festival. My cousin right now is Terrence Kelly, which is the director of the Oakland Interfaith Gospel Choir. So we've sang with the Hawkins singers. I mean, I grew up with playing bands against back then, before they were Tony. So we came up I was actually doing music. And then after that, that was my first experience from an external standpoint. But then the direct experience came when I actually ended up getting into my brother-in-law told me that there was a situation where I had a band, and a cat named Hammer was actually doing some auditions because he just signed a record deal and a production deal with Capitol Records. And that ended up being like the first kind of American Idol where they actually had us in rooms, and they had contests, and whoever's songs kind of made it, actually that was how you were going to be signed on as a production thing. So then me being R&B and music, and I had a band, I was like, oh, I'll do it. And fast forward, I ended up getting it 2 weeks later. If I got it, started working a couple of months later. I stayed back at Cal State, then Hayward to finish my degree while they went on the Japan leg of the tour. Come back, there's too many things that me get into or whatever, so I'm not going to necessarily get into it. But needless to say, after that, 2 weeks later, hey, I get a plane ticket. I'm at Chan Hansen. I'd never heard of Chan Hansen, even though I was a big Prince fan. I'm at Paisley Park recording 2 weeks because we about to go on the third leg of the Pepsi tour, and then the rest is happening from there. We were there with Prince. He let us use the rehearsal studios, and after that, that's when everything just kind of spearheaded into all the kind of stuff you see behind me, yada, yada, yada. So that was actually my first, leading up from that first experience. I never thought that those would tie together, but even though it sounds cliche, because you look on Google and everybody say, oh, it's Sugar Hill Gang, literally, that actually was my first encounter with hip hop.
So you were pretty much at the helm of like pretty much every cycle of hip hop, because you're starting from the Sugar Hill Gang, that was like the 1970s, and you're talking about MC Hammer, which was probably, correct me if I'm mistaken, like late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, that was late 80s, early 90s. Yes.
Yeah. So you were pretty much at the kind of like the turning point of every, like the overall the evolution of hip hop itself. And you got to actually see the transition and changes over time. And it sounds like you also come from a musically inclined family as well. So that's very cool to hear that from a manufacturing standpoint. So we're going to extend it to the pod to hear a little bit on the consumerism side of hip hop. I know some of us have actually dabbled in music a little bit as well back in the day. D and I have a lengthy track record with that. Mashing up genres, trying to create our own
making beats. I was the beat person. I was making beats. And Salas over here, Mr. G Ransom was over here, more of the writer. But yeah, man, it's just crazy hearing some of I feel like I just got a sample of Mike's story, and it's so crazy just hearing some of like the people we work with and like all that stuff. My very first experience, just to answer the question before somebody choose me out for not actually answering the question.
Yes.
So my very first experience was actually the Chronic album with Dre. And it's so funny because I did not even know who that was when I first heard it. It was like by accident. One of my cousins had it and they played it. And I love that album. I love West Coast rap music. That was really my first experience. And then it's so funny how like instead of listening to the stuff from the current era, that I ended up going back and started listening to like older stuff. But yeah, the Chronic album, that was my first experience.
Good old Hollywood rap, yes, sir.
Seriously, what about you, friend?
Just thinking, Chance, and actually, is a very familiar place for me since I live in Minnesota. So I can relate to Chan Asson. So shout out to Prince. Rest in peace.
Yes. Rest in peace. Yes.
I was just in Chan Asson yesterday actually. But my first experience with hip hop, growing up in Nigeria, I was exposed to like Michael Jackson and a lot of just the more pop music. And I think in 1999, I think DMS was real hot at the time. And I remember my cousin, D Black, and his mom bought me this Walkman. And I remember I used to listen to a bunch of radio, walking around to school with it. So DMX was like my first big like rap that kind of stuck out to me. But there was a lot of R&B pop in there though that I felt more connected to. But DMX just had this raw personality to him, and I was like, "Yo, who's this dude?" As a young kid coming straight from, fresh off the boat, I would say, everything was amusing. I was real amazed by all of it. So
that's crazy. That is really crazy because the first hip hop album or rap album I ever purchased was actually the DMX album. Like,
oh wow.
And I was like all of 13 I think it was like 13, 12 around that time. So I'm like, yo, how am I able to buy this? Like,
right. I was gonna say you're 13 years old. Come on, man.
I got it on tape, and then later on because the vinyl actually, no, the CD came out, compact disc, and I went ahead and I bought it on that too. So I would always I probably had that on repeat like every day when I purchased it. Like, I don't know, always like my first I grew up in New York. I come from immigrant Jamaican family, grew up mostly in New York, and it's like it's the same thing with Fran. Like my parents had pretty much I think like for all immigrant households, you have all the major icons albums, right? Mm-hmm. At that era during that time. So you had Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson. You had like just this great surge of talent in music. So I was always listening to that along with, wanting to connect culturally with my people's music. So there was always a ton of like reggae and dancehall that was available. So my actual first encounter with any type of hip hop was with dancehall first. And I heard my first hip hop song in a barbershop. It was a basement barbershop in Queens. And it was Nas with the Lauryn Hill, When I Ruled the World, If I Ruled the World. And I remember like asking my mom, like, yo, what is this? I was like, what music is this? Like, I've never heard this before. And she was like, I don't know why you're asking me. So I asked the barber, I'm like, what's this?
Like, I was
he was like, you don't know what that is? I'm like, nah, I don't know what that is. Like, kind of just being a foreigner still in the area that I grew up in. He was like, yo, that's Nas. And I'm like, okay, Nas. But it wouldn't be years later until I bought the X album where I really fell into hip hop and like really embraced it. And shout out to X, we lost him last year. Mm-hmm. And just to hear that there's been so many firsts, I was just kind of, I had to chime in on that one. But Chunks, right. We know you like, Britney Spears and all that other stuff.
Yeah, what's wrong with Britney Spears? I don't understand what the problem is. I bump that all the time.
You're right. She's hard.
I love Britney Spears back in the day. Stop it.
I mean, who else can come out and say they're Britney bitch and get away with it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Don't forget that ball.
Yeah. I mean, I do got a couple of Britney songs.
Like, you just muted yourself, Mike.
I was gonna say because she actually she opened up for us one time, and it's like she's pretty hard. Dude. I don't want to just take it totally to the left, but when you do say Britney, dude, she's unfortunately I'm one of the people that would have to kind of stand up for her because she's gone through a lot and she's been a pioneer. So unfortunately, she's one of the people who really gets. I mean, she was literally one of the first child stars that was like Christina Aguilera got the Grammy. But Britney had 3 diamond albums, dude. That's 30 million records as opposed, okay, I got the Grammy. And that's not pitting one against another, but it's like, okay, you're going to say somebody doesn't necessarily have talent. Yeah, the other chick can sing, but even though I am for the singer and the talent, it's very hard to deny 3 diamond albums in a row. That's 30 million records. As much as I hate the word to say it, that's 30 million, bro.
My guy, 30 million, my guys.
My guy, that's 30 million.
Follow up behind that. After that, I'm just like, I'm done talking. Yeah, I would say I fell in love with hip hop with Naughty by Nature, so hip hop Hooray. From the area from I'm from, so like East Orange, like that area, you got Redman, you had Rod Digger coming out of there, you had Joe Buttons coming out of there. So like I was already into hip hop, and my mother listened to it. Like Hot 97 was the radio station that I listened to. So yeah, of course, when DMX came out, I was like, oh, here's a whole reason for me to be angry. And it's totally acceptable. So I would say like he kind of got me really interested in like kind of like not like angry music, but like it was like a hybrid between that and like rock music, right? So like hip hop like had a lot and does have a lot to it, especially how we were growing up. It was more of emotion that was poured in it. It was more substance in the lyrics. That's what made me gravitate towards it. And when I listened to the songs, it wasn't because of the lollipop beat. It was because of what they were saying, what they were going up against, what they wanted people to do, what they wanted people to see, how they wanted us to become. And then on top of that, it's just like, yo, if I'm fucking mad, I'm gonna talk about it. And it's like, that's great. You get all these ranges of emotion, and that's awesome. So like I just kind of just fell in love with it. I'm still in love with it. With the music coming out now, it's different. I feel like that old dude where it's just like, it's not like the music we had back in my day. And like you listen to parents that said that before, like, oh, what is this music? It's like, oh, well, you don't like Lil Wayne? You don't like Little John? Like that's good music to me. So no matter what happens with hip hop, it's forever evolving, and it reflects the generation that it's currently in.
So now let's talk. You touched on a great point, which is actually the next question. We're talking about music selection and how that's changed over time, if it has, as we've matured over time as well. Because understandable, like listening to X at like 12, 13 years of age, or however you got it, however you're able to get your hands on it, whether that was a consulting adults or supervision. But I can also speak from a point where I could really sense my emotions being in tune with his. Like if you were to describe that album, you say it was dark, it was gritty, it was real, it was poetry, it was prayer, it was a very passionate project. Like you could definitely sense that. And that's one thing that's probably synonymous with X. But as we've gotten older, do you think your selection in music has also changed? And if you're a parent on the panel, do you want to control the type of music your children has access to in return? So let's go ahead, Chunky. You think you started on that one? Let's bring it back up with you and hand that to the panel before we pass it to Mike.
As a parent, like I don't know, it's age appropriate, right? I can't control everything that she listens to. When she goes to school, she's gonna listen to whatever, right? And so we did. So I have to have that understanding when I hung out with y'all, anybody else, and I wasn't supposed to listen to some hip hop music, and I did. That just is what it is. Has my music preference changed? Yes, that's because of what I've been exposed to and how I relate to it, right? So the biggest change you can even ask, well, you know, and D Black's been around it more so than none. I listen to EDM music. Like I love Jersey fist pumping music. That's just me. It's just like feel good music. I can have fun with it. I can work out to it. I can run to it.
Yeah.
Just those beats per seconds. It's just like per minute. I'm just like, great, this is great. So that and rock music, the things that I gravitated towards playing collegiate sports, there was a myriad of cultures I got to be involved with, right? And they brought things to the table that, hey, this is not bad music. Now, country music, I can only do like 5 minutes for the week. Just to be honest. Anything outside of that is a little too much. But yeah, my taste for music has developed over the years because I've developed as a person. So I've learned a lot more and learned to appreciate more.
How much of that would you say is hip hop now, currently, if at all?
A very, oh man, I don't know. It's weird, right? So like I'll stop listening to hip hop for like a week, right? And all of a sudden I'll turn on Sirius XM, I'll listen to Hip Hop Nation, and I'll just hear this banger. And I immediately download it. And that's like what I'm listening to for like the rest of the month. So it's like it wasn't as good as it was, my personal opinion, back like in college and in my 20s. Like everything was a banger to me. Now it's just like I'm very selective in the hip-hop music I listen to, because one, can I relate to it? If I can't relate to it and don't understand it, I don't know what I'm listening to. I don't know how to feel about it. But there are some songs that's just like, yo, this shit's just fire.
Yeah, agreed.
I think the objective of the music though too matters. Like I don't know, like I'm not gonna say that the music like when I was listening to the Chronic album, that was appropriate. at the time. I mean,
well, bitches ain't shit, but
I mean,
just,
but in tricks. Oh my gosh!
Like the cereal?
For reals? Yeah, for reals.
But I mean, but it's so funny because it was like I understood the objective of what the music was about, even if even that song, like I get what they were trying to get at, you know. But it's just like I don't know. I'm not gonna say, and it's not me trying to take shots at anybody. You know, I think every song has its space or its role or its place where it goes. You know, like some music is more about just having a good time and vibing to the music. Some of it more about being cerebral. It's all about, you know, the objective of the music. But I will say, I don't know. I just feel like some songs don't have objectives. You know, it just feels like it's just songs to be made. And that's the part that kind of, you know, that's why I always tend to gravitate to, you know, some of the more older rap, you know, but that's just my preference, you know.
How about if you think about it, when you have children in the future, do you plan on maybe controlling what they have access to or what kind of music they can listen to?
I mean, that's a good question, but I mean, you could try because of the fact that, you know, I mean, does that just that same song?
All around the world.
I ain't trying to, I
mean,
don't know.
You turned out pretty good, D Block, you know?
I mean,
Yeah,
but we know how we know what
That's
it took
subjective.
to get here. We know what it took to get here.
No, it's so funny.
It's hard. It's hard. That's a hard decision because I feel like that is part of our culture, part of who we are. But some of it is, I don't know. I feel like the times have changed too. I don't know. That I feel like I would say yes, but I know that it may be no depending on the song. I was like, I gotta hear it first. Because I know if my mama heard me listening to Chronic, there's no way she would have let Mom take me to church every Sunday, gospel. She's like, talking about hoes. Hoes.
What is that?
What is a hoe?
No, but I'm working in the garden. I'm doing yard work.
That's funny. No, it's so crazy. No, I think for me, there's been an evolution with how I listen to music. And from a societal standpoint, the way we listen to music has changed. Shout out to LimeWire, shout out to Zshare. You know, the joy of downloading, going to newhiphop.com, you know, going to wordstar.com and trying to find all this new music, you know, especially when you're in college, you know, listen to Jay-Z, Lil Wayne, all of that stuff. You know, back then, I would say I was like completely, you know, 95%, 99% all rap, hip hop, and I barely listened to anything. But now, over the years, it has shifted for me. You know, I listen to a good amount of pop music and really different genres as well. You know, I even love lo-fi music, just those little, just the beat and just have that playing in the background. It's just different. Like, but now you know, now that we have Spotify and like Apple Music and Amazon Music and all this stuff, I'm more of a playlist guy. And I listen to a lot of Afrobeat, like African songs, you know, It's really what I listen to be honest. I listen to the same playlist, you know, all the time. So I don't really, you know, I think there's so much content out there. It's hard to keep up with all the stuff that's out there. So for me, I just feel a lot more joy and just listen to my playlist. When Kanye drop an album, I listen to it. Rick Ross, you know, my favorite artists when they drop stuff out, listen to it. But yes, my music selection has changed for sure. And if I have kids, when I do have kids, you know, I think the only thing I would change is maybe play the clean version at the house because they are going to listen to it. You know, I was an assistant coach at one point, and we were paying to 13-year-old in the cars, and they are the ones showing me all this. Like, they introduced me to a bunch of artists I never knew because I had to pick some of them up from their house, and I get like, they go crazy. They're like, play this song. You know who this is? I'm like, no, I don't know what this is. Like, they introduced me to a lot of different side of music, so it was really cool. Like, so like they gonna listen to it. If they don't listen to it and get exposed to it at the house, their friends are listening to it. So might as well keep it clean at the house. So.
No, because when the sweat falls down my beat, are you serious? They're not gonna figure out what that is?
Well, I mean, the point is they're gonna listen to the dirty
window,
to the windows, to the walls, and
they're gonna
strip club.
They're gonna listen to it. They're gonna listen to it with the friends.
I say yet, as you know,
I mean,
I said they haven't been to the strip club yet.
Right. They age, the older they get, yeah, it changes.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's just such of a loaded question that it's just really hard to try to answer that one, because for me, I'm not ashamed, dude. I'm older. Literally tomorrow I will be 55, bruh, and I'm still current. So it's like I'm old school. I'm old new and new old, but I'm from the school of I've never really called it hip hop. I called it music, and I got it to be music. So when people ask me that question, I treat music the way I treat my food. Today I might like Chinese food. Tomorrow I might like Mexican food. So I'm listening to Niger music. I type in Niger music videos.
Woo!
And all the groups from Nigeria.
I'm listening to the Afro beat.
Yeah, and I've listened to Davido and all of them before they were hot. So I mean, but mine was because I got married to a woman who was born in Romania, but she also lived in Italy. So I was going over there every summer. And then I started listening to these other cats. The whole Brazilian funk thing came. I was on the beach in Becky Bay out there in Italy. And it's like one tribal song came on, and every girl from 3 years old to 80 got there shaking their ass. I'm like, I never heard this in America. I go back home on YouTube, and this is instrumental that's on, got like 4 million views. And then all of a sudden, it's like this huge Brazilian funk thing breaks out to where it's all tribal. That got me into Brazilian funk. Then I got into dembo. Then I got into Latino. Then I was like, of course, I got to try to figure out where I'm from. I'm getting my roots. Now I want to go to Nigeria and Ghana. And I'm dealing with another artist from the Ivory Coast that I'm about to try to get to work with. I'm going to eventually get back over to Africa to start with that music. So when I said, dude, I haven't listened to hip hop in about 4 years. And they're like, why? And I'm like, bruh, I can show you 5 charts on billboards. Out of them 5 charts, I guarantee you're probably going to see the same artist on those same 5 charts. But if I go to Niger music, when I listen to them other 5 charts in the North American music, everything is going to be about all around the world, the same song. And I'm like, I understand this is a voice of the community for culture, but I've heard Boys in the Hood remixed about 10,000 times since 1985. So I understand the struggle. But then when I listen to Niger music, it's like everything's about culture, love. They're talking about, I'm sorry, baby, I messed up. What can I do to get you back? They're still treating these women like queens. And I'm like, I'm on a different frequency. So it's like, I don't care if you don't, if I don't like what you like, it's not me. I hate that we have to live in a subtractive world. I'm living in an additive world. So it's like, just because I don't like something doesn't mean that I'm hating on you. If I haven't listened to hip hop in a minute, I guarantee you as a producer, I cannot listen to hip hop for 2 years. Play it for 2 minutes and I'll get right back to it. No, but it's like for inspiration, but it's like, once again, it's like food. I'm treating it like food because like I said, if I miss hip hop for 2 years in North America, I guarantee you within 2 minutes, I can get caught up. And I can't necessarily do that with other. I was like, unfortunately, as I'm traveling, I'm also finding out just through my personal way of dealing with music and also from just a commercial standpoint of studying the quote unquote consumer. Most other cultures, and I will never be able to generalize it, but from my experience, most other cultures know way more about their artists that they listen to than us in North America. If it ain't Jay-Z, if it ain't 50 Cent, I mean, put it this way, and I will use his name because I'm using it in a positive manner. Soulja Boy was one of the first people to make music an item. It's like you had to have Soulja Boy because you didn't want to be the kid or somebody showing up at a party and you haven't heard the hottest song. So now when you got a side, back then it was a sidekick or whatever, if you hadn't heard that song, you're square. And I'm like, okay, it wasn't, did you like the beat? It wasn't, did you like the lyrics? It wasn't, did you like the content? It was literally, now this is like a fashion item. And so when I divorced myself away from that, when people say, as you got older, I'm like, it's not a negative thing. I love them for what they're doing.
Michael, I also wanted to touch on one point that you mentioned there, and this in regards to just the change. But I also want to reel it back into as well. So there's one question I wanted to ask you about hip hop today. Has hip hop or rap today truly departed from its revolutionary or cerebral beginnings? And if so, who's to blame? And this is something that we talked about earlier too, because if you look at hip hop now versus where it is today, which is probably some of the gripes that I know I personally have. I'm not a big fan of a lot of hip hop today, which is why, honestly, unless I'm in the gym, I'm not really. It's either hip hop or gospel I'm listening to while I'm working out. For some reason, gospel does it for me. But it's like nowadays, it's like some Tiger bit, you know what I mean? It could get you in the spirit to work out, you know.
Raise him and praise him, yes.
Exactly. But I feel like with a lot of hip hop today, and one of America's issues potentially is that, you know, as opposed to Afrobeat, you have maybe a few artists coming in at a time, as opposed to America, where you could have anyone that could write a song and, you know, make a beat in a day is literally an artist, is literally a rapper. And then they have a platform where they can just easily go and promote themselves and use the Soulja Boy method of, you know, pretty much spam filtering MySpace to get your music out there. But when we look at music today, do you feel as if hip hop has truly departed from its beginnings? And if so, who's to blame for that?
That's another big loaded question, because in there really sometimes you don't want to answer a question with a question, but then I would ask you,
sure,
is it necessarily hip hop? Because usually the biggest problem we have is it's the commercial promoted side. Because then you can dig into a playlist and get into a bunch of independent artists, and you can actually find these things that you're looking for. And then it becomes the algorithm becoming the monster that you feed that literally attacks you. And you're feeding the monster that's attacking you. So when it comes to hip hop, is it being different? Well, it's kind of what is your definition of hip hop? Because once again, me even traveling almost every summer, when I find that there's an issue with hip hop, and then I have to say it ends up being a personal problem for me, because then it is my personal problem. Because you go to other countries, and when it's not North America, and when it's not poisoned by quote unquote commerciality and what's necessarily selling, they're listening to it because they either like it or it moves them. And in America, it's a thing because once again, it's got to be commercially viable. So I tell my older cats old music is different than the new music. There's two M's. Back then they were making music. Now they're making money. So it becomes a thing of where, you know, they're putting out records because they're trying to get the man back, because they're trying to sell something to make money. It's kind of like, okay, I can give an analogy when somebody always poses me that question. Well, who's better? Okay, McDonald's, on the sign, it says over 1 billion sold. So does that mean since they sold 1 billion or served 1 billion people that they're a Michelin star restaurant? No, they're not. But in America, if an artist sells 20 million copies and it's crap, and it really is crap, but you can't say crap publicly, but another artist who's like a Black Thought or somebody socially conscious, they may even get a Nobel Peace Prize. But if they only sell 5, if they only go gold, what is this artist who sold 20 million copies better? In North America, unfortunately, it is. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like you can't really say like is it hip hop? Because then as it changed, then you can find somebody else who's a real historian. They'll tell you, no, brother, hip hop has not changed. If you really dig deep, you'll find a lot of these artists that really have some things that are out. So then it becomes what's necessary. You're having a problem with what's promoted out there. Do you actually look, or do you just follow that algorithm? And do you feed that algorithm?
So in regards to your question on what we consider hip hop, then I would just consider any music that has these elements of hip hop, I would classify as hip hop. So I guess in regards to that, would you say that a lot of the music that's being released right now could not be necessarily considered hip hop? Like, even though it may have elements of it, maybe is that just from more so a subjective point of view? Like, hey, I consider this to be hip hop and this to not be hip hop? Or are there like this? Is it really objective to where there's a certain elements of the music that have to be met that make it hip hop? Like, for instance, yeah.
No, I was gonna say, I'm just trying to. If you want to keep this on the cerebral beginnings, and you're talking about the DJing, graffiti, dancing, and emceeing, none of this music is hip hop, and that's been gone years ago. And one of the reasons why, when I was at Cal State Hayward, we had a wonderful class called The History of Rock and Roll. And when we talk about how music at the time was made on the medium, that was if it's cassettes, that was back when that was big. If it was reel to reel, that was when if it was vinyl. And now you're getting into the social media and the digital platform. People are recording and making music on the forms of what's available. And it's like, when you talk about that, those DJing, graffiti, that it's kind of like the Tesla versus the Ford. See what I'm saying? So it's really it's everybody starting to really I have an issue with it, but I choose to try to sit in the back seat. Everybody has a war of semantics of about, okay, well, that's subjective. If that's subjective, food is subjective and art is subjective. No, it's not. I really consider this music. It might not necessarily be with the cerebral, it's just different because you're going to get into the poor man's argument every time. When you say this artist isn't whatever, oh, but they're better. Every time that they're better, dude, it's always going to, in North America, it's because they're more popular or they sold more. So now I tell my buddies, there was a time where there was a socially conscious rapper. Now we have to have socially conscious listeners. Until we have socially conscious listeners, you're always going to get into that debate. And unfortunately, nobody's ever going to win.
All right, so I'll drop
it's
this
not, I'm serious. I mean, I'm saying it's not really hip hop. I mean, it really isn't. But go ahead and let me say it's not hip hop on Twitter and whoa, everything blows up.
It's a different story.
I mean, but I'm saying because this is digital, it'll be forever. So I don't want somebody 20 years later coming, oh, Mike said this, whatever. No, when you ask that specific question about the cerebral beginnings. Now, if you have somebody who's young, 20 years old, and they grow up, you're going to ask them what their definition of hip hop is. And they're going to tell you what their definition of hip hop is based on when they were born and what their experience of it was. Ours was DMX. Ours was Run DMC. But theirs may be the Baby. Theirs may be Pop Smoke or whoever. So that's when I'm kind of like, that's a loaded question. But for me, coming up, being born in 1967 and still doing stuff now from Sugar Hill Gang, Run DMC, it's totally gone. But I don't consider that, I consider that something different than what's now. It's not that it's good or bad. Mine is, it's different. That's all.
So let's hear it from a consumer point of view. I'll drop this next question to the panel. And thank you for that breakdown, Mike. When you look at the quality of hip hop or rap today and the emergence of subgenres, for example, is drill rap, do you think we've lost a sense of art in rap? And I'll drop that off to start off with you, Francis, if you'd like to get off on that one.
Yeah, no, I think, I don't think the quality may be different, but I really resonated with what Mike is saying because, who are we to define what hard is to somebody else? And I think, as a consumer, we have to decide what we enjoy out of what's been displayed or put out there for us, as listeners, so. Yes, I think the quality from what we, when we were growing up, it was a lot of focus was on, what was going on in the community, fighting police brutality. But now, like Mike stated, I think there's a lot of focus on just making money. People are just following a trend now, and it's really just what makes the most money. What's gonna get me on the radio? Because I was actually just listening to a Nicki Minaj interview with Joe Budden, and it was just like recently, and she was talking about, the stress that comes with, trying to how you have to. She was trying to time stuff like when she released music, so she can, talk about like how trying to like catch even the worst, try and get nominated for like hip hop awards and stuff like that, and it's more like a lot of it is business decision now versus like I think sometimes it takes away from the heart itself, but nowadays people are just focusing on the hands, not really the means, so it's like, they just kind of focus on what can I get out of this versus how it really impacts the society or the people who are really listening to it.
And go ahead.
So for me, I think let me go back to something that Mike was saying. I know I'm kind of deflected from the question.
Go ahead.
I think it's interesting because, like I said, I think the objective matters, right? And the fact that you said, it was about the music and now it's about the money. And it's unfortunately, I feel like I can see that, like I can clearly see that in the artists that are coming up. Doesn't mean that your song can't be fire or it can't be catchy, but that's why I was saying like every song kind of has its own place because some songs now I just feel like they're more for, a little catchy hook. They have a dance to go with it and everybody kind of vibes to that and, give it a few weeks or so and then we move on to the next song. And that's the kind of trajectory that some of hip hop has been, I mean, my favorite person right now out is Kendrick. I mean, I love Kendrick. I'm a huge Kendrick fan. And not just because he's very lyrical, from my opinion, but also because he knows how to manage the money side of it too, because you have to have the balance of both, because regardless of what anybody else's opinion on, Jay-Z is, he's going to go down as one of the best rappers of all time because the objective of being the best rapper is being marketable, being able to make money. That's the measuring stick that we use now. So am I going to say that I prefer his album over somebody else's or anything he makes? No, to my opinion. But it doesn't mean that he's not good, but I wouldn't put him as the best. So I don't know. So I think for me, when it comes to hip hop and when it comes to rap, lyrical will always be kind of my first kind of go-to, because I'm ultimately using that music to, tell a story about something that I dealt with in life, something that I could be relatable to. Even music now is not, even hip hop now is not even just about like drugs, sex, and violence. People are rapping about mental health. People are rapping about, relationship issues. There's a lot of other things that people are actually going into. I actually started listening to Lil Dicky, and I actually like his music. I think he's comical, like comedy rap. So, I don't know. I think that those type of music is still popular, but there is another niche under there that is just the objective is just making money. How many songs can I throw out right now, and just make money off of that? So,
yeah, I would say like the title of art, what makes it art, is always. I think that's a responsibility really left to the consumer. And so you could find art in several things that you wouldn't expect it, right? You could find poetry in several things where you wouldn't expect it. And to me, it's just like, as a consumer of the genre and the music, as seldom as I am now, I kind of feel like, at least for the artists that I like to listen to, that the art is somewhat missing. Like, we've now, instead of this looking at lyricism and trying to find, I would say like one of the things that attracted me to hip hop was that was probably one of the only genres where you give a guy a beat and they'll find probably 10, 15 different ways to find a flow to it, to rhyme to it. The content matter is like, rap itself was just very individualistic. Like, you could just give the person free roam to do whatever they wanted to do. And I kind of feel like today, almost anyone is able to get a platform, and almost anyone is able to call whatever the music they make what it is and promote it that way and get it to millions of people at one time. And not a fault to the tools, but more or less so, human nature. But, being that, we're in a society where it's all about chasing and getting the bag. Yeah, hip hop has become somewhat of utility or another stream for some people just to make money. And I think that's where we lost a sense of art, when we were actually, I felt like there was a time where artists were looking at each other like, hey, don't let this music down, because this isn't the first time we've heard about people speaking badly about rap and trying to blame it for whatever. So there was like somewhat more responsibility thrown on the artist to really produce content that was like relevant, made sense. And even if it was like on the silly side or the comical side, because not everyone's a revolutionary, right? It was still a sense of, okay, he put time into this, there's some quality behind it. You're not relying on a beat to really get people going. And you're not intoxicated half the time when you're probably making these raps, right? So it's kind of like, I wouldn't want my barber high when he's cutting my hair. So in a way, I don't want my artist high as a kite either when they're making their tracks and being like, yo.
Inspiration, though. It'd be inspiration for some people, though.
I get it. Yeah, that's true. The proper sativa and can unleash those channels. But it's like, I feel like nowadays it's people using it as therapy. And it's not a great therapy session in that sense. But I'm not sure if there's any other comments or points on that before we jump to the next.
No, well, I mean, that's just way of too much of a loaded question. But no, I didn't know, Chunky. If you wanted to go say something, you say something first. You go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. I mean, you talking about like the cerebral consumer, right? So I'm going to do this. It's basically subjective. So it depends on how I feel, what I want to listen to, right? If I want to be straight ignorant, I want my sound system to be bumping, maybe I listen to some YG or some drill rap, right? If I want to be conscious, maybe I listen to some Common or some Nas or anything else like that. So, I look at music in a sense that it's my preference at the moment. It's how I feel and what I think and what I decide to digest. There's good hip hop songs out there, and like you said before, it's business good, but it's not lyrically good. It's not consciously good, and I don't listen to it. It's something that, like, okay, what do I want to feel like today? What I want to go through today? What can I gravitate towards to today or for this week? So when I consume music, it's something that, one, I need to relate to. Two, that sounds good to specifically me. There's stuff that I listen to that D Black doesn't like, that Glenn doesn't like, that Francis don't like, but I like it, and I'll be yelling and screaming it all day long. But that's just my preference. Just because 80 million people like this one song doesn't mean I have to like it. It's all about how I feel. And I think Glenn said it before, when it comes down to art, it's my interpretation of what I find that art to be good to me. So I may buy a record or buy a song off of, iTunes that may not have the star next to it, but I like it. So that's the way I look at music. It's just like, it depends on what inspires us, what motivates us, and what makes us gravitate towards it. So, this lollipop music, I personally don't like, but at the same time, kids in their 20s may like it. That's their generation of music, and I let them have it. And I'll just be that old head, bumping Naughty by Nature and just having a good time, and look at me like I'm 80 years old. But that's music that I like.
I mean,
no, go ahead, Francis.
No, I was just thinking of something. I think something we also have to keep in mind, and I think a lot of artists complain about this, is the corporation also decide what they put out a lot of times as well. Even though they have like even more self-conscious, more like community-based, more lyrically music that they would prefer to put out, but the corporation say, no, we actually want you to put this more club-based type of music out. So until you actually become like more of an independent artist and you have more sole control over what kind of content you put out there, it's kind of really, we have to also kind of keep in mind the struggle. We all in corporate, right? So we know the politics that we have to play sometimes, even with our bosses and managers and directors and stuff like that. And I think the same rules apply to them as well. And we have to also kind of keep that in. I'm not sure where that fit into the picture, but I do think it is a factor.
I think Mike could probably talk more about that as far as how that goes. But I mean, I guess as far as it's related to the discussion, it's like, isn't that also probably one of the problems with the genre? Like in my opinion, I viewed hip hop as being that rebellious, revolutionary. You never heard anything like this before. I feel like artists then in its prime had more courage than the artists today, because everyone's more concerned about securing their welfare. How many views can they get? How many downloads can they get? How many streams can they equate to dollars in their pocket instantly? As opposed to, hey, I'm going to make some music that's relevant, that's speaking on issues impacting us, or I'm just going to actually speak about something rather than I'm just going to appeal to what's the trend right now just so I can secure that bag and move forward. And I feel like that's a part of the issue.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why it is because what Francis kind of said is you got to understand that with the artists, it's like nowadays, back then you had time. Now everything is based on the moment because of social media. Everything is Twitter, everything Instagram, everything is instant. So now the artists are always going to want to be instantly relevant to stay relevant. That's number two. And then number one, it's always 15% for the artist, 85% for the record labels. So they're going to be on that money thing right now. So that's something that they're also dealing with. So I tell people all the time, you got to understand they're artists, but they don't have that much. They don't have as much control as you think. Or they may put out something, deliver an album to the label, and the label may say, this is cool, bro, but this ain't what we need right now. So it's like at that point, they're 15 and the labels are 85. So once again, that M back then was making money. I mean, music, this is making money. It's kind of like when you look at doctors and researchers, they actually get grants. These artists don't have grants. They get an advance or a loan at a very terrible rate. So they got to pay that money back. So at that point, they're figuring out how can I stay relevant, but still pay my bills. And I'm not saying it's to condone it.
People are going independent, right?
Yeah, well, man, come on, bro. I would tell anybody if you are socially, or if you are just worth half your weight in salt, you would know that if you're an artist, you really don't need a record label right now, bro. Because do the math at $6.99, and you keeping it all. How it's not about the record. It's not about the artist going gold. It's how much did the labels and them paying promotion for that artist to go gold. When they went gold, are they still in debt to the label? And I'm not giving up secrets, bro. Go to YouTube. This is what I mean by when I tell people, like I said, legal or illegal, if you selling marijuana, wouldn't you say, why would you go into a business that you know very little or know nothing about? If you know nothing about this business, bro, don't cry because you got quote unquote scammed. Do your research, which is why I tell the young people do quit with that I'm hot, quit with I'm the greatest. You don't even know what you're doing. You really don't. So it's like I try to tell it's like know your business. They told us back in the day, you guys call this the music business. We call this the business music because they take care of contracts first. As a hip hop community, we so love the art that we'll go ahead and record a song first. Oh, this song is cool. Okay, yeah. Now let's get ready to put this out. Dude, it's 3 people. You didn't do a third split. You didn't find out who's going to administer the publishing. You didn't find out, oh man, you're too smart. As soon as you get into the meeting, well, where's your lawyer? And who's going to do it? They're all trying to figure out publishing, administration, all this stuff that you didn't know about. And then you're, oh, okay, well, what's happening? I got a sample in here. Yeah, bro, that sample got 3 different publishing companies assigned to it. And out of the 3 different publishing companies, you got 3 different people. That's 9 different people you're dealing with. But you wondering why you in a group and you can't get paid because you thought you was getting a third, but this got split up with 6, maybe 12 different publishing companies. So it's kind of like at that point, these younger kids now, they're like, okay, boy, I can try to be creative, but at the same time, I want to be able to be comfortable being creative. So I got to try to get a bag. Right, or it's not necessarily right or wrong, but then that's what I'm talking about, where it's the business, and then you got to understand, well, what is it necessarily hip hop? Because you really need to be able to be comfortable to make your music. But at that standpoint, I'm not going to the right. I'll stay to the left. You were comfortable in making it, and it was free. Mm-hmm. Now this is a business. And you have operating costs. You got studio costs. You got all this stuff. Now this is not just a little corner DJ party in 1973 with DJ Kool Herc, and nobody had to invest anything. So now also, how are you doing this free? You got kids, you got a wife, you got whatever. And now everybody got a fake phone, this fake dollar bills up to their ear in a video because I gotta have this symbol of I'm making money. So I'm saying this because this is also a part of the music that's actually being put out.
So, Mike, I want to ask this question before we jump to the next one. In that sense, who is responsible then for making the symbols or making the trends that everyone's following? Because, for instance, like if I'm the person complaining about something, then I would take it upon me to change what I'm complaining about. So at the rate that the music is being made and the trends that are being followed and what's really more prevalent right there out right now, I feel like that conscious rap that everyone's looking for, that quality is something that you have to dig and search for or wait for Kendrick to drop his album every 5 years. So it's like,
when's the next Kendrick album?
At this point, it's like, who's responsible for then creating the trends if there's kind of like this split, like who ultimately decides what is going to sell, what I should be doing? Isn't that really up to the consumer at that point?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's when that's it. Every time I get into that debate, I tell it, we've had a time of conscious rappers. Now it's time for conscious listeners, because unfortunately, the record labels are chasing something that should be chasing it. The record labels are chasing social media when social media is actually chasing the record labels. So social media is actually dictating what's hot. Then the record labels figure, okay, well, we don't want to be the last one. We'll jump in and sign this person. Okay. We don't know what you're going to do yet, so let's sign you to a 360 deal. And if you can recoup, we'll do whatever. But so what are they going to do? They're going to jump on that because they think that this is something hot that they should actually be doing. When in a sense, you're creating whatever was hot. You need to have them chasing you. And then if you're doing all that work, why do you necessarily need to make the record label? I mean, why do you necessarily need the record labels to get that deal? When what you're talking about, as long as that debate comes up, it's always going to be the poor man's argument, because now it's not going to be about artistic creativity. It's going to be how much does that artistic creativity cost? And if you have another job If you're a hedge fund manager or if you're a real estate agent, whatever, and you're rapping part-time, you're going to put out as much socially conscious music as you can because it's not breaking your bank. You're not putting out a rap record and hoping that you can pay your light bill because ain't nobody checking you. And that's the issue. That's the biggest. We'll get to that because that's the last question on the agenda. But there's a big elephant in this room that I'm waiting to answer, but it has to come to at the end of the agenda. So what you're saying, I don't put it on the artist, and I don't even put it on the corporations because they are the biggest pimps in the industry. They do not go anywhere where it's not making money or it's not hot. If you don't have a major record label in your city, point blank, your city ain't hot. The minute they go where it's not hot, they pack their bags and go somewhere else. So the listeners, all they got to do is turn somebody like R. Kelly off and they on to the next. You don't even have to complain.
But one of the things that's being tossed around is the social media. I think everyone's probably dropped it at least once. So I want to get into this next question. This next question is inspired by a quote from a Rolling Stone article covering New York City Mayor Eric Adams' opinions on the subject matter covered in drill rap, a musical subgenre of rap originating from Chicago, now permeating the Brooklyn rap scene. He claims, quote, "I had no idea what drill rapping was, but I called my son and he sent me some videos and it was alarming," he said. "We are going to pull together the social media companies and sit down with them and tell them that you have a civic and corporate responsibility," end quote. With that said, is it the responsibility of social media corporations to determine what is considered free expression of art versus illicit or polarizing, potentially damaging content or activity? I want to drop this over to the panel first to get your take. So should it really be up to social media to determine what gets released to the public as far as art, or consider or be able to deem what is to be considered offensive art or offensive expression? Who wants to start that off?
I mean, so social media is, it's funny because we talk about social media like it's this beast that lives over there that we have no control over, even though I'm somewhat disconnected from social media, but social media is comprised of individuals. And, so thus the people are the ones that ultimately determine what gets played, what doesn't get played. I mean, cancel culture is determined by the people. If I can literally say cancel so-and-so, but if it doesn't get enough traction on social media or whoever or wherever, that person will not actually be canceled. So social media is us. So yes, we ultimately control what is good, what we think was viral, what is worth sharing, what is worth listening to, what the genre should look like. I think one thing with hip hop is just that it is always trying to reinvent itself. And with reinventing itself, it needs to go in different directions. It needs to pull from other genres. Even like, I know I kind of dabbled in music, but I'd be taking stuff from ABBA when I was making beats. Like that's the stuff that like my parents listened to, and that's the stuff that I really enjoyed and tied that into music. Kendrick reshaped how we look at rap music. Whatever you think of Kanye, he's a musical genius in his own right. So, we ultimately determine what, is popping. And if we as a community, think that a certain type of music doesn't fit within the genre, I think it's interesting, just as a last piece, that it's like young hip hop people, I don't know if they really even care, but I feel like they're trying to justify that they are still hip hop to an older generation. And we're looking at them like they're not hip hop. And we're basically trying to say, no, you're not the same as us. You need to go over there and be whatever the heck you are. But they're just trying to say that they're their own version or form of expression of who we are. And as social media and all that stuff kind of gets tied into it, it's ultimately about accepting that different type of art form, even if you don't necessarily grasp it. But anyway, that's a long-winded circle to answer or semi-answer your question.
Well, do you think that social media, you're saying, what I understand from my interpretation of what you're saying is basically we ultimately decide what's popular, and then are you saying that because we're sharing it on social media that we're the cause of it? Or, in a way, let's take this for an example.
Like, we have control. Yeah.
so let's say, for example, during COVID, during the height of pandemic, we saw a couple of notable people that had their Instagram or Twitter accounts banned or suspended for spreading misinformation about the disease. So in that same vein, if social media can now control, hey, who gets and this is just statements that people are making. Mm-hmm. So in that same vein, if it can censor what's being said about other subject matters, why isn't it able to censor what's being said in, I guess, material or content that could be considered damaging or offensive? Like, where does that control or stop come from?
Oh, you're talking about censor. Oh, the question is more geared towards censorship.
Well, the question's asking, should the corporations be allowed to indicate what's allowed to be sent to the public?
I mean, like that's based on opinion, though. I think ultimately everything is based on opinion because, like we've already talked about, there are a select group of people that enjoy that type of music and found that to be hard. And there's another group of people who disagree, right? And I think that's the beauty of the community, the society that we live in today, because we can all coexist with opposite views. So there was a lot of pushback even when Twitter was kind of like suspending people's account because that ultimately kind of goes against your freedom of speech, right? So it's really kind of comes down to, for me, like as far as the question goes, I think we are the consumer, we have the power. There are key pillars of outlets out there that I think really push or like kind of help push artists to the community. So I think really ultimately, if people are keep liking it and loving it, there are big artists like going back to the interview that I talked about with Nicki Minaj, and she like admitted that her last album didn't do as well as the other ones because she felt like her focus was different from like how she usually approach her album, and that really kind of speak louder about her audience, mm-hmm. right? That they didn't even like support her song, and so like with that being said, I think we all have civic responsibility to really, if we think something is wrong, we don't share it, we don't like it, we don't support it, we don't view it, because all of that stuff all builds up and does put money in somebody's pocket. So we have to be more like, I think all really goes back to what Mike has been saying. We have to make that decision, what we support and what we don't.
I mean, I would say when it comes down to social media, so there's this cool feature on your phone that you can turn it off. There's a cool feature where you can block things. There's a cool feature where you don't have to subscribe to stuff, right? So my thing is that when you talk about freedom of speech, but you can go out in the world and say whatever you want, but when you're going through a company to voice your opinion, I believe that company has the ability to shut you down. The terms and agreements that you may or may not read may have that stated in there where they have the ability to do so. So, huh? Good point. So looking at it, it's just like nothing against, Mayor Adams. I wouldn't put the onus on a company, right? So I agree with you, D-Black. We do have the ability to control it. Francis, I agree with you as well. But the way I look at it is just that you have that control as an adult, right? You have that ability to not listen to something, to listen to something. If you don't put it out on a public platform, it goes to a private platform, right? So somehow, some way, people are going to get a hold of this. And either you want it up front so it can be managed, or it's going to be behind a closed door where it's not going to be managed and it blows up to something that could possibly be negative. Not saying that drill rap is negative. My personal opinion, music is music. People listen to what they want to listen to, not knocking anybody, but, in order to control something, you kind of have to, put boundaries on it. And we determine that boundaries, yes. At the same time, we determine what we decide to let in or what we decide to put out as individuals.
Chunky, I have a question. So if we start, if we start allowing companies like Facebook and Twitter, I can't. Twitter. And Twitter, yeah, I'm not on Twitter, so I can't even pronounce the word Twitter. And anyways, in Facebook and all this Instagram, all this company start like censoring what we view. who manages the company on where's the limit? Where does it stop? You know, like I mean, I understand what you're saying, like the fine print and all of that stuff, but like, where does it stop, right?
So I could speak on a lot about it, but I kind of want to hear, Mike's opinion on this, because
Yeah.
he has a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I can tell you how I feel and what I
Yeah.
think, but I want Mike for you to speak up, because there's probably some nuggets of knowledge that I can't even speak to and I
No,
don't know.
it's a big elephant in the room, but it still comes back down to what I say, because when I'm saying things, I wouldn't want somebody to get out there and say they want to try to slap me because I'm negative. I'm saying things because I'm so proud of hip hop, and so I expect better. So when I tell you it's the community, these are businesses. These businesses are just like stocking a supermarket. They're not going to stock a supermarket with shelves with stuff that they're not going to sell. So if you stop buying it, they're going to get rid of that product. This article specifically with Rolling Stone, when I read it, one of the direct things that people probably either paid attention to or didn't pay attention to was when they talked about the police in London finally got the directive that these artists had to try to check in with the police to see if they can get an okay or not. I'm like, okay, they did that in London. Now we're talking about this is America. In America, we don't do what they did in London. Second of all, first of all, like I said, with the corporate, you can't tell a business what to do. I mean, this is going to be a podcast. I'm going to let people know I'm just saying this for analogy purposes only, okay? So if this was YouTube, don't go crazy in the comments. But I'll go so far as to say they have recipes for bombs on Google. Are they banning it? No. It's manure. You can go to Home Depot and create. There are kids that have done this.
Yes, sir.
Is that being banned? No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Now this ain't about music no more, because once they do it in music, a lot of information is free. There's a lot of misinformation. So who's to say that when something is on a specific platform, who's sponsoring that platform? You can go so deep as to where, okay, you should be putting these quote unquote people in prison. Dude, these prisons are privatized. Who's making the money off of this? You see what I'm saying? At that, you got to figure, sometimes you have to question the message. Sometimes you have to question the messenger. Sometimes you have to question both. This is America, and that's art. If you want to censor it, all our community, and those are our kids. I won't speak bad about them. I won't necessarily condone them. But when you have somebody like Kodak Black, you have somebody like NBA Youngboy, I can't go negative on them. That's my son. That's my nephew. If I'm the hip hop community, he's part of me, good or bad, he's mine. I need to try to help dude before I say, oh, we need to censor him, because if I censor him there, how I know that he cannot come back, or somebody else may come back in a positive manner. Oh, okay, but now he's pigeonholed into that thing, so we got him. Dude, this becomes a fact that we're still begging when we don't own, and we're begging. Beggars can't be choosy. If we had Black corporations that own these labels and own these distribution channels, then maybe we can say something. But why are we going to let something do? We're drug dealers. We sell on a corner and battling with something that we don't even own.
Mike, I want to ask you a question as well on this one. I'm going to pose it to the rest of the group as well. So great points you're making there. But as far as maybe looking at the control of the music and who should actually have control of it, and what Eric Adams is requesting. But at the same time, can anyone say that perhaps we're too slow, or corporations are slower to react to it because of the color of the people that are being portrayed in the music? Like, does it really help fulfill maybe a certain narrative about people of color? Because primarily within the hip hop genre, I mean, if anybody asks you who's the predominant, people of color in that group, it's obviously going to be brown and Black people. So could it just really be, because for me personally, I feel like it's a lot harder, especially on social media, to find like a lot of uplifting and positive content before you find hundreds of thousands of garbage content. So it's not like, I'm not sure if that's in relation to maybe the algorithms and maybe the things that I've clicked on. So that's the kind of content that I'm getting. But I can say for myself, I follow a lot more positive things than negative, and I will find the next, shade room moment or the next ratchet situation is so much easier to come across than it is to come across something that's a little bit more uplifting. So in a way,
We click, but what you just hit on it though. And trust me, I'm way more against it than you think. I'm far on your side, but I always have to tell people, unfortunately, since it's a business, you got people that have put up a negative story about Rihanna. Okay, now 2 days later, you got to get a takedown notice. Yeah, but that's cool. But I already got 25 cents a click at 500,000 clicks. So I'm taking that because I make my money. So now it's a hashtag game because I'm trying to make the money. But who clicked it? So, dude, you got to realize that way back in the day, and it's still true to this day, you got a pie that's 100%. 75% of that pie is going to be Caucasian. You take that 75% and make it another 100%, 85%, that's going to be female. Most of your audience from hip hop is going to be a white female. They're buying it. We're not even buying it. Dude, you can barely get your black brothers to say that they're rich as hell as a rapper, dude. He's so rich, ask him, can you borrow $20 and see what answer you get? They don't have, dude, it's not what you think. You see what I'm saying? So it's like our community, we fall for so much crap. It's ridiculous, dude. And the reason why I'm saying it is because it's literally our fault. We don't even own it. But if we do, let's say we're okay with not owning it. Once again, how many rappers do you know had a hit and it was literally on the charts for 1 week and was gone? How much do we really support? And when you talk about the difference between hip hop and what D Black said about new hip hop, when is the last time you heard of a soul artist come out with an album in 2020, let alone 2022? It's not soul anymore. It's new R&B or alternative R&B. I'll take this to the Oscars and the film industry. In my personal opinion, one thing that really happened that was kind of messed up was the fact that you put hip hop as a major genre. It's like, okay, what was that? Slumdog Millionaire. It got an Oscar, but it was for an independent. Why? You had a quality control thing to where things had to be a certain way for it was quality control. So rap music used to be a thing where this was a hot and quick thing, and I'm gonna go because the quality wasn't there. It didn't take a, you look at the credits of a movie, dude, and you see it's almost 50 to 100 people
on an album now.
You know what I'm saying? So these Caucasian businesses will let you know we're creating corporations to help hire other people and take care of their businesses. They're going to tell you y'all are creating a job for you as a single person to make money. American government can't make money like that. You have to be able to provide services for other families. So now I'm saying that because you got 50 people on a song, on a movie, a hip hop artist, I can sit here and in 1 week by myself in a home studio, create an album, don't cost nothing, and put it out. They're like, that's profitable to you, but that ain't profitable for us. We got to make some other connections with Nike, with this other thing, whatever, so on, so. And I'm saying all this because then when everybody talks about the artistic part, it's still going to come out to the fact that then it's about the money. And we don't have the control in the money. When you don't have the control in the money, you're actually going to have to control with like what he said about the Nicki Minaj, and she felt it in the pressure. It's like they're going to figure out what can I deliver to my record label, but they're also going to figure out how can I help my artists. So now it's like these artists are put in such a big conundrum that regardless of whether you like them or not, if you understand what they're going through and they're going in the studio and they got budget constraints and they got family members, they got record labels, they got people they got to feed, there's a huge thing going in other than the fact that I'm going to sit in my room, light a candle and sit here and write this deep poetic poem. It's like,
you just got to get something out.
Yeah, so it's actually more on you. There's a lot of more pressure. So I'm saying, I'm not trying to be the scapegoat and say I can't say that it's not one necessary person's fault. That's why I love hip hop so much that I get angry, because I'm like, if us as a community, what do we have as Black people? About $3 trillion buying power? You mean to tell me we got $3 trillion buying power? We don't have a record label. We don't have our own distribution. We don't have nothing. Yet and still we want to turn around and beg somebody for something and then turn around and tell them what to do. Now, if you as an individual Black business, how would you feel when you created something with you and your family and then the government all of a sudden, okay, Chunky, you created this number one thing, bruh, but now you got rules. And it's like, didn't you leave your corporate job because you came in the land of opportunity to create what you want to do? Freedom of speech, freedom of art. And so I'm saying this because, trust me, I don't agree with the art or whatever, and all I don't. But we really have to get to where we're a conscious community of listeners and we decide. If we put it this way with the drill rap, if it doesn't affect me directly, why would I want to censor it? If I'm not operating on that frequency, dude, I didn't know about this until you sent me the article. Some people are going to say that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so, and as much as they play that, oh, come on, jack that fool. Many as they did do. Okay, put it this way. When have you seen a dollar stand up and slap somebody? The money is the root of all evil, right? Money is the root of all. When have you seen a dollar jump up to slap somebody? Hey, man, you ain't treating me right in your wallet, man. And when have you seen a gun jump up and shoot somebody? And when have you seen a bottle of alcohol jump up and stuff it down somebody's throat and then say, you never wanted to, Chunky, but now, because of me, you're going to go rob somebody and get that Mercedes-Benz that you wanted since you were 12 years old. No, that's you.
Sound like a Kanye West album.
I mean, I'm a personal trainer and I'm also integrative wellness life coach. So I'm going to tell people, no, money ain't the root of all evil. I've never seen a dollar bill jump up and stab somebody. At some point, we have to say, dude, that's us. Yeah. And when you jumped on to think about the art, think about it, dude. When is the last time you seen somebody say, okay, I got two pieces of bread and I'm gonna just hold it with a toothpick and it's air. This is the new hamburger. It's not a hamburger, but that's what some of these young kids, this is hip hop. Dude, it's something like D Black said. It's different. It's not necessarily that hip hop. Like I said, soul music. When have you heard of a serious soul artist album in 2000? They don't even, dude. Every soul avatar has got a black and white picture looking like a blaxploitation film. But is that new soul? No, they will let you know for a fact that's old 70s soul. So how come this new stuff can't just be its own thing and it's new? They had that whole thing about mumble rap. And was mumble rap better? And mumble rap, the implication of you calling it mumble rap should have been the answer anyway.
I was thinking the same thing.
Dude, it's mumble in the rap. How can you get mumble rap? Dude, that's like saying this is the black white, bruh. This is black. This is the black white. I'm like, no, but you got social media. Somebody's got to actually market this to sell it. I told my boys, it's like when you think about it, dude, rap was considered something that was so derogatory and so grimy that they, this had to be an alternate, you just almost had to be an alternative universe. Some of these companies said, well, let's make this more palatable so we can sell it to a bigger audience. Since there are no black-owned corporations, I'll let you come to your own conclusions. But since they now have this broader thing, it can't be so derogatory. So what are we going to call it? We'll repackage it and call it hip-hop. Now, when you got it hip hop, now you got kids in Malibu listening to it and they ain't got to explain why they listen to it because now this is not rap. I'm not killing somebody. I'm listening to this new palatable thing. You know what I'm saying? But then we let that go. Why didn't we copyright that? Why didn't we market it? Why didn't we trademark it? As a community, we got to come back and say, why are we still creating all these great things? Like saying, dude, the only culture I know of that I can think of that still appreciates the fact that Black people created something is Japanese and jazz. We created blues and we created jazz. How come people don't listen to jazz? Oh, it's too complicated. How come you can get a certificate to be a plumber, a certificate to be a nurse? You even have to get a certificate to be a babysitter. But a 12-year-old, and trust me, Deadmau5 said this, so don't hate on me. 12-year-old can get a laptop, press one button, and now he's an EDM producing king. You're a producer. A producer. I tell you it's a saxophone and you thought I said phone sex. You don't even know what the saxophone is. How did you be a producer?
All right, so Mike, you're on a roll. So I want to hand off this next question to you to close this out with it, because I think you're probably the most accredited. You are, in fact, the most accredited to answer it. So I'm sorry we didn't get to go through all of the questions, especially speaking on some of the correlations between the music and the neighborhood, but maybe that could be a part 2 that we look into as well. So we'll definitely reach out to the listeners and let us know if you'd like to hear that. But I'm gonna drop this last one to you so we can close it out. Within the game, the hip hop, the music game, there's this somewhat trivial pursuit and jousting match for the lauded title of greatest of all time, or like we like to call it today, the GOAT, with many rappers often dubbing themselves the best in the game right now. Mike, in your opinion, what makes a rapper great?
in my opinion, for a rapper, I would just think, because I have so much respect for him, regardless of the age, I think a rapper should be, if not one of the greatest storytellers. And so for a rapper, for me, it's really about you being able to tell a story. And it doesn't mean that you have to be socially conscious, whatever. It just means, like, a perfect example is somebody like a Snoop. And if people who have met a Snoop, one of the reasons why he would be considered so brilliant is because he literally, you can just drop stuff down and off the top of his head, he can rap about it. And he can literally do it in any context. I'm not just like on his jock or whatever. That's just what he is. Is he the greatest in my opinion? Not necessarily, but the definition of what a greater rapper would be. So it's harder for me being old. I'd have to say my opinion is my opinion. I'm not nobody. So my opinion doesn't matter. But in a closed door thing, for me, that's what would make a great rapper. You are the greatest storyteller, and you should be able to tell a story literally about anything. I don't know if that's making me answer your question. I don't know who's the GOAT. I don't get into that. But if you're talking about what makes the greatest rapper, that's what makes the greatest rapper. And if you want to talk about somebody hip hop or anything else, that's a different story.
Facts. I appreciate making the distinction there as well. And, we'll take that and we'll rock with it, and we'll let the listeners decide. What do you feel about Mike's comments today? What do you feel about the subject? Let us know in the comments, or just DM us on Instagram, or send us an email. But for more content or learn more about the podcast, feel free to check us out at Jerk Jollof Collard Pod on IG. Podcast episodes drop every Wednesday. Stay tuned for the outro coming right up to additional ways to reach us and send us your feedback. Mike, thank you for rocking with us and chopping with us today, man. We greatly appreciate your knowledge and your passion on the subject matter. You definitely helped us out here, and definitely would love to do a part 2 to address some of these other questions that I know you got a lot to say about.
Yeah, but I would want to end it too. Like I said, trust me, when I'm saying these things, it's not because I would be the hater or the anti. I'm actually still in love with hip hop, and I've been in it for way too many years. So when I say that, it's because I have a reverence and I have a love for it. And I'm somebody who figures, regardless of what your age is, your hip hop is going to be yours. But I'm also at the standpoint of when it's considered a craft. If it's considered a craft to you, then I would expect you to be the master of your craft. Because just like one cat told me before, well, this was a very popular song and it was hot. And I was like, just imagine if it sounded better, how much longer it would be hot. So when and if I say something, it's because you don't need to it's not like Nike anymore. Just do it. No, it's maximize it. And I'm always trying to get people, younger ones included. You're supposed to be better than us, and I expect you to be 2.0, 3.0, and I applaud that. This is in no way being a hater. This is actually because it's my fault. And when I say the older generation who came up with hip hop, we didn't pass the torch correctly. And it's time for us to correct that. Because if they are mad, they will tell you, you can't tell me nothing. In a sense, you got to agree with them because we didn't tell them anything. We didn't tell them about the pitfalls. We didn't tell them. And I'm saying that because when you talk about other cultures and other races, they will actually bring them up through cultural education, through generations, letting you know these are the pitfalls that you had, and this is what you're going to look forward to. When the internet came, all of us older cats called this a joke and said this whatever. They're out there. They made this a communication. They're making their money. How is it that now, since they're doing that we're going to sit here and put them down for it? Maybe we can correct them and tell them how to make a better art, and it's up to them. But as far as a blame, at that point, I literally have to tell you, I'm sorry because it was my fault, and I hope that I can help you.
Mike, do you have an IG, Twitter? So if more people that think the way that you do would like to follow you or probably pick your brain a little bit that you like to share?
Just look for G Diz or G Dizzy and you'll find me. Trust me. And my website right now is kind of a little bit empty because I'm totally starting all over. But when you go to Beat Killers, BeAtkillahs, beatkillers.com, then that's where you actually start to see some things from me. And once again, I will have to restate this because I know if this was on YouTube, people would go crazy. No, it's because not only me, but a lot of us have the love. And if anything that I'm tired of, bro, I've been in the lawsuits and I've been through all that stuff and I've got my behind kicked. If I would be able to spread any knowledge to some people, you are now in the position to make your own money. I stress Get your money, but don't just do it. Learn about it and maximize it, because the social media thing, unfortunately, everything is about today. The bad part is most people make their money off of future publishing. So it's not about today. And the better your craft, the longer you will be in the business. And put it this way, they say we have to retire at 35. How come is it that Aerosmith and the Rolling Stones are touring at 70, still making millions? This hip hop is ours. We shouldn't be retiring at 35. And if I am, I'm passing that torch to somebody, and I'm going on tour in Germany making millions like them. We shouldn't be cutting off our own heads because we think there's a separation between old and young. We need to learn our craft, help pass it on, and our generation should be making money. I'm just going to leave you with that, because I don't want anybody to think that anything in here was negative, because it's not.
Facts. And on that note, thank y'all for chopping with us. Check out G Dizzy. You can find him, the venerable Mike Kelly, right here, because definitely a lot of your insight definitely helped us here today on this discussion. Until then, y'all, see you all again next week. Peace.
Peace.
And that concludes today's episode, but that doesn't mean the conversation has to end. As a matter of fact, feel free to check us out at JJC Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter for our post-discussion question following the release of this episode. If you are a Black or minority business owner or professional that would like to be featured on the Rep Yours segment of our show, or a listener with some general feedback for the podcast panel, feel free to shoot us an email at jjcpod@gmail.com. As always, likes and comments are always appreciated. Be sure to subscribe or follow to be notified when the next episode releases. And until then, stay safe, stay blessed. Peace.